Let's get back to this story now. Donald Trump has been elected the 47th president of the United States after securing more than the required 270 electoral college votes. Trump also looks set to be the first Republican to secure the popular vote since 2004 with the election of George W. Bush. Our senior politics reporter Ziyanda Ngcobo, still in Georgia, in Atlanta, which is one of the swing states warned by Trump, giving him 16 electoral college votes. Ziyanda, you are where Trump secured, maybe to some, a surprise victory, Georgia, by 50.8 percentage points, which is a testament, really, of how divided the views of the Americans are around this particular president.
Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing surprising. If someone is surprised, then they weren't watching closely, just because of how it's always been a very close race in areas such as Georgia and North Carolina, where we started. The results there are also showing what we've been reflecting throughout, that it was a close race. In North Carolina, Trump won by 51.1 percentage points, which is very close to the just over 47 percentage points that Kamala gained in this election. Of course, as you've mentioned, 16 electoral college votes going to Donald Trump, but winning this election decisively, even in terms of the popular vote, making history. And of course, lots of, still some nervousness, but in terms of the fear of the unknown, now that Trump is back in the presidency, he will be back in the White House, an inauguration likely to take place in early January. And certainly a lot of post-mortem being done on where the Democratic Party would have gone wrong. You'll remember that Kamala Harris only had 107 days to campaign, and by and large, the commentary is around how the American population was looking for a change agent, and by virtue of her being a vice president under Joe Biden, she was unable to separate herself from that. And even her comment about her not really changing much if she became president is also another factor. Another interesting point is how she didn't perform well. She's performed worse than Joe Biden in 2020 and worse than Hillary Clinton in 2016. So in terms of the women votes as well, the women of America, they didn't really back her. So it's also indicative in terms of the gender aspect of this particular election, and whether or not, the American population is ready for a woman president, a black one at that, is also something that's been reflected on. So certainly, an area such as Wisconsin decisively given then that victory to Donald Trump, and a lot is being discussed about what to anticipate in his administration. The legal cases against him, the likelihood of them being dropped. There was another one about the hush money that was meant to be heard in about 3 weeks. That's likely to put the judges in a predicament. And so there's a lot of discussion that is taking place. And where we are, we're at Emory University in Georgia, Atlanta. There's going to be a panel discussion where they're going to be unpacking some of the things that I've just spoken about, as we now in a new reality where Donald Trump is the 47th president of the United States.
Now, it has been expected that the Vice President Kamala Harris would give a concession speech at some point. The president himself, Joe Biden, expected to behave, many are saying, in a way that not necessarily would be the way that Trump would have behaved when he won, but he's expected to give him a call. He's expected to invite him to the White House. Do you know when all that is going to happen?
What we know for sure at this stage is that Kamala Harris is expected to give a speech at 4 p.m. our time, so that's around 11 o'clock in South Africa. And by and large, by now, one would anticipate or hope that the shock would have worn off. This is the reality of what has taken place. The shock amongst the Democrats, I should be very specific. It's interesting to note how there were watch parties. There's one in Washington, at Howard University. University where Kamala Harris was watching, the results come in. Trump as well. He was in Florida. He also gave some remarks, and the difference in mood, the Democrats seem to be quite happy and buoyant during those watch parties, where the Republicans seemed a bit more reserved. And then as soon as around 11 p.m. Struck last night, the mood started to shift and be the complete opposite on both sides, almost like a complete swap. So by now at 4 p.m. we'll hear from Kamala Harris what she has to say. There's lots of talk about how the Democratic Party needs to do some soul searching, so to speak, and how they fail to realize that everything around this election was around the economy and the porous borders. The illegal immigration issue was very topical in the U.S. and how, there was just not enough from her, at least that's what some people are saying, in terms of how she was going to deal with this issue. And by and large, part of what has been said about the success of Donald Trump in this campaign is how he was able to speak to bread and butter issues. So the issue of the cost of living crisis and the affordability of things like groceries is something that he spoke sharply on. But also the fact that he is seen to be someone who gets things done. Now, you can debate about, what he gets done, but when he says he's going to do something, he's got that, brand that says when he says he's going to do something, he does it. He said he was going to build a big wall. By the time he left his presidency, he'd already started that. And he's already said that he would end the war in Ukraine within days of returning to the presidency. That's another topical issue, the geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. And so this is what is being discussed just slightly under 24 hours until, of course, those election results started coming in. And it's a new America, it's a new day, but still a lot of uncertainty right now in terms of what's going to happen in terms of the administration of Donald Trump, where lots are talking about how he's likely to repay those who've been loyal to him in this campaign trail.
One of those questions, I suppose, is exactly that, whether Americans, where you are in Georgia, are comfortable with some of those things that he said he would do. For example, use the Justice Department to get back at his detractors and his enemies, some of those that he said he will deport, get out of the country, and so on and so forth. Others saying authoritarianism coming into play, dictatorship coming into play. Is that a concern for the voters?
Absolutely, and this is the thing about what I'm saying, that yes, the results are very clear. He's won both the Electoral College votes and the popular votes, but it's unclear then how soon will he affect the things he said he would do. Is he going to affect them in the way that he promised during his campaign trail? Now that he's coming back for a second time, are we going to see him, doubling down on what he said he would do, or perhaps a bit more cautiousness from his side? I mean, he is the 47th U.S. president, but certainly he's coming in for a second time, and that means the dynamic is completely different. He's inheriting a completely different economy, one that many are saying has improved under Joe Biden since the COVID-19 pandemic, and maybe he's going to be claiming successes that might not belong to him. Nevertheless, it's unclear, as I said, as we are here at the Emory University and other spaces that we've been to, that there's a lot of nervousness. I mean, even in the streets, just the block where our hotel is situated, there are already about 4 police cars that are stationed at almost every robot traffic lights, I should say. And so you can tell that even authorities are on standby for any kind of reaction with the history that has taken place with the January 6th insurrection when he lost in the 2020 election. Now that he's won, one doesn't know what the future holds, especially for African Americans, where some are saying, there's also nervousness around how highly securitized, and militarized the police in America will become. The topic of George Floyd and what happened to him during the Trump presidency also comes to mind. So there is that sense that no one knows, now that he's back at the helm, what America will look like for the next 4 years.
Ziyanda Ngcobo, thank you tonight, live for us in the United States, in Georgia, in Atlanta. And we'll be, of course, watching closely what that dialogue will entail where she is tonight.